Welcome back to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay. Chance Oberstein is a criminal defense attorney in California. I'm a media professional. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as legal advice. Chance, this is Cesar Chavez, part 2. Where do we just leave off?
Well, we were talking about how these allegations have had significant public consequences despite the fact that he's gone, he's died. And the headliners here are the UFW canceled its participation in 2026 Cesar Chavez Day events and stated that the allegations involving abuse of young women and minors are deeply troubling. Also, the Cesar Chavez Foundation acknowledged the allegations and announced efforts to support anyone who may have been harmed. And several governments and institutions canceled celebrations or considered renaming streets, schools, and holidays honoring him. So because he's deceased, I think we have to just pause for a minute because we have to think about this. There cannot be a criminal prosecution. He's gone. Consequently, these allegations, not criminal convictions, are judicial findings. Okay? They are not criminal convictions or judicial findings. No court has determined the truth of these claims. And I think I should repeat that again. No court has determined the truth of these claims. So the question is, why is he being canceled?
Because we don't have innocent till proven guilty.
Yeah, how is this then? How is it that it's having, these allegations, the import of them are severely impacting his legacy and causing these changes to be made? I think one of the reasons is why some institutions are reconsidering is largely due to the 2026 sexual abuse allegations, combined with the broader social trend of re-examining the legacies of prominent historical figures in the context we were speaking about, which is the layer that we understand under our context, how we see the world today. Not necessarily how the world was in their day. But, what's driving the debate is, one, the allegations themselves, because they're the sex allegation. Okay, the magical sex allegation. Several women have publicly accused him of rape and sexual abuse, including allegations involving minors, as we've just discussed. These claims received significant media attention and prompted organizations associated with Chavez to respond publicly. Because he died in 1993, there could be no criminal investigation or trial to determine whether they're actually true or not. So, this is interesting. This is where social media kind of intersects with the sexual misconduct allegation. How does that play with you?
Well, this is what you just made me think of as victim impact statements. We place a lot, I believe, even the judicial system, from what I understand, because victims do give their statements. And when we can hear the victim say how it impacted them, it carries a lot of weight. And my understanding is one of the accusers did even put on social media and then subsequently took it down, something about how can you march for this man? I was molested. And that's
right.
That is intense right there. I can't even parse. I can't parse that.
Well, the responses are really interesting because following publication of these allegations, and again, this is a journalistic publication. So, the United Farm Workers suspended or altered some Cesar Chavez Day activities. Some schools, local governments, and organizations began considering whether buildings, streets, or other things bearing his name should be renamed or reconsidered. But others chose to keep his name while acknowledging the allegations and encouraging further historical examination. So it has caused either a quick reaction based on allegation, or a rethinking, a hesitation, or a closer look at the man and his conduct, okay? When really we can't test any of these assumptions. We can't test them because these are changing standards for, public honors. Many institutions now distinguish between recognizing a person's historical accomplishments and deciding whether that person should continue to receive public honors such as holidays, statues, or schools named after them. So the question becomes not simply, did this person make an important contribution, but also, should public institutions celebrate someone who has been credibly accused of serious misconduct? That is, when we're doing that in the court of social media and journalism and the rest, that becomes a very broad brush. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think what's very an important volatile element here is the dangerous political implications. I'm going to back us up again. The January 6th rioters, having been pardoned and apologized to, and even, recently, I think there was a bill to try to pay them, says, oh, they were good. They were extremely good. And what they did was they were victims and they were patriots. Whereas if we, as a society, come down hard on Cesar Chavez, it backs up that, oh, everything he did was terrible. He was a bad guy. And it sets a dangerous political precedent that what he did was terrible and that the farm workers were always rotten apples. I'm being extremist, but there are people that look for those manipulative hooks. And you see them on social media. I was reading. I got to read the comments, which is hard because I hate the comments people put so many times. And that meaning, like people say pretty gnarly stuff. Oh, he deserved it. Always a Hispanic. I'm being nice. Pretty gnarly stuff just because they didn't like what he stood for.
Well,
and this gives
true.
them the ability to bring the hammer down on what he stood for, which was actually the right thing to do. It's kind of like, right? Because I'm sure you've got Southerners that are still waving the Confederate flag, that if they could find that hook in a abolitionist, they would. They're going to bury their shovels in his head.
Well, the implications are endless. But if you just take really simplistic things like the arts or music or whatever, okay, if say a recording artist had a relationship with an underage girl, like say Sonny Bono, Sonny and Cher.
Sonny Bono.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So he was in his 30s. He was in his 30s. She was
Canceled.
17. So you cancel their music. Okay. Maybe,
even though they were in a relationship, but under statutory law, that doesn't count, right?
Well, because it's his sexual misconduct driving the conversation.
Incredible.
Okay? Because she wasn't old enough to make the choice herself, and so legislatively
right?
she's deemed
a total victim. Yeah.
She's deemed to be someone who
is
lacked
actually
the ability to consent.
Unfortunate for real victims, but yeah, it is.
Or Elvis Presley and Priscilla. Then you cancel all of Presley's
she's a
Presley's
total
music.
victim. Oh, she's still struggling with
Michael
that
Jackson.
Well, see, and then I know. Okay, Michael, see, this is where it's so important to understand the difference of reality. I do want to point this out. Listen, while the accuser said that, how can you march for this man? He molested me. Okay, important context. But here's some more important context. I call this bombshell context. Did you see the letter that is apparently written to Cesar Chavez by Debbie Rojas in 1974? Have you seen this?
It was published?
So, I'm sorry. I said published. I meant she wrote a love letter to him. She says, I'm just writing to say that I really had a nice time in La Paz. I'm really glad I got to see you and spend time with you. Well, not like that. But just to know I was near you was enough. I'm looking forward to the summer Boy, Cesar, I was really sick the past few days. Everybody sends their love. You know, Cesar, I get so lonely. I'm really lonely. I might go roller skating next Friday. Cesar, I hope you can read my letter. I write funny. Oh, well, I hope you're fine. How's your family? Write to me if you can. What do you want for your birthday? Isn't your birthday March 1st? Mine is February 20th, the same day as your son Fernando. I think of you all the time. Do you think of me when you see me? I mean, she's in love with this guy.
Right.
If she,
and
and
we're
it
at
reads like an actual letter by a, young girl
and here
or
in
whatever.
2026,
It's
we're at
weird
a point
that we have
where
this.
the allegations have never been tested in court. He cannot defend himself because he is deceased, and his achievements in advancing farm worker rights remain historically significant. We know that because they are documented fact. So those who oppose removing his honors are thinking that way. Those who support removing him argue that the allegations are sufficiently serious. Get this, serious, not true, serious, that he should no longer be publicly celebrated regardless of his contributions. So apparently now, it's not necessarily whether they're true, it's whether they're serious. And this is, I'm getting to my point. Somewhere down the road.
Yeah, we're moving
here,
into grooming laws is what we're doing.
I'm getting to my point.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a factual position on this because I haven't examined anything. Because it's too late to. Okay? All we have is the allegation, and I wasn't there. So, others, other than the two positions that I've just said, others take a middle position, suggesting that his accomplishments should be continued to be taught while also presenting a fuller account of the allegations and controversies surrounding his life. Well, still, you're taking them as true because they're serious. But ultimately, this is less a legal question than one about how societies choose to commemorate historical figures when new information emerges. Not necessarily true or false, but serious. Different communities and institutions have reached different conclusions. But, the truth is, Jay, it's the allegation, stupid. That's the situation. That's what the situation really illustrates. This is what happens when someone is simply accused of sexual misconduct. That's the bottom line here. And I think that we can weave that through all issues we've been talking about throughout the time we started this broadcast, whether they're true, false, indifferent, or otherwise. It starts with the allegation. And before anybody can even get there, the knee-jerk reaction is if it's really serious, it must be true. What do you think?
I like that analysis, and I'm going to add another layer because it also depends on if you like the person.
Correct.
Because, and I saw this in the comments also, there was a lot of people defending him because they like him and his legacy. And there was a lot of people attacking him because they hate him for what he stands for. And when we look out and look at other people, I'm going to say this. The Supreme Court just upheld the E. Jean Carroll sex assault, compensation against the President of the United States. And there are still people that want to blame her for attacking him.
But her allegation was that what was her allegation? Now that
she raped him. He raped her.
That's right. I think so.
E. Jean Carroll contends that he raped her, and I think that there was enough preponderance of evidence. Well, that's civil, right?
A jury believed it and granted her damages.
Okay, so they met the burden of proof.
Yeah, but and this is contrast.
He did do it. It's not hard to believe. But what matters, a lot of people don't want to think that a sitting president did that. Which actually, for my money, is worse than what Chavez did. The problem is people get into, it's an age thing. Even though this girl wrote him a love letter, she says, I don't know what to tell you. I still love you. People
See,
don't want to they can't handle that. They just can't
and
handle
here's the contrast here. Let's just say between the is it Jean Carroll
it's like
situation,
Jean Carroll, yeah. Jean Carroll,
whatever that is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ms.
here with Cesar Chavez, there's no criminal prosecution, no civil lawsuit against him personally, no trial,
There's actually
no opportunity.
Well, I suppose there would be DNA evidence because they did get pregnant.
Well, yeah.
So they
but
can
that
they
DNA,
can look at the timeline and go statutory rape, right?
Yeah, but DNA evidence about what? Because you can get pregnant because there's consent, right? Or you can get pregnant because
now you sound
there's
like a
lack
defense
of
attorney.
consent. So
Man.
what is DNA, and unless she was underage at the time and she's saying she was molested, what does DNA evidence in this context really mean? This is, so, and here, no opportunity for cross-examination or judicial determination of the facts we're talking about. So how do we put that DNA evidence into context? So as a result, public opinion and institutional decisions are based on investigative reporting, about witness accounts, historical records, and credibility assessments made by journalists and historians. I mean, what is that? I call it like social media. That's Truth Social. That's social media.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, that's why Truth Social is aptly named. I will say this. What's interesting is because we just heard some, criminal defense attorney talking. Okay, I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean to say is, for anybody listening, I think, because I've done this, and I think that it's a normal cycle. You assume, because you hear that criminal defense attorneys don't help people until you need their help. And then you realize they're the only ones you got, because you're dealing with social perception, and nobody's going to stand up for you in the comments of a YouTube channel.
Correct. And it's really important not to generalize too broadly from this case, because this case is unique, even though it has common threads running through it. Let me, as an attorney, say something to our audience that I think is really important to think in terms of legality. An allegation is not the same as proof. In the legal system, allegations must be proven under the applicable burden of proof before someone is found liable or guilty. Two, this is outside the legal system. Organizations often make decisions using different standards. An employer, university, nonprofit, doesn't matter, or a government may decide whether to honor someone based on reputational, ethical, or policy considerations rather than the criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. Happens all the time. And the credibility of allegations do matter. Allegations, the credibility of, think about this, serious allegations. I'm saying they don't bear truth because they're untested, but they certainly do matter. Institutions may respond differently depending on factors such as the number of accusers, corroborating evidence, contemporaneous documents, independent reporting, and whether the allegations have been investigated. But those allegations, especially if they are serious, do matter, as we can see here.
And what you just said is another brief summary of why you need a criminal defense attorney. I'm not trying to oversell you, but as a regular person trying to wrap my head around all those elements and keep them in some semblance of order and be able to argue them on demand is beyond the capability of somebody that is under deep interrogation. You can't do that. You're trying to hang on to your sanity and your family.
Hey, I like that, sanity and family. And this case is unusual, really, Jay, because he's gone. He's deceased. So that means that the allegations cannot be litigated or fully contested in court, leaving the public to evaluate historical evidence without the benefit of the judicial process. You're talking about the judicial process. This particular highlighted case lacks that. And more broadly, the case highlights the distinction between legal judgment, and public or institutional judgment. The legal system is designed to determine criminal or civil liability. Public
Now,
institutions, employers, and the public itself often make decisions based on different goals and standards, such as trust, values, or appropriateness in continuing to confer honors. Totally different than the legal forum. So, what does it adhere to? Probably the algorithm of social media and trends, right?
if I was a member of a community that held in high regard a school named after him, a street named after him, a park named after him, and then I heard about this, I don't know what I would think. But unfortunately, I think either way, by canceling him, you're not erasing a stain for several decades. Everybody that remembers the street as it was named, or the school, or the park, they will have to die off before you scrub the stain off the face of the location. And by that time, there's going to be a whole new set of historical figures facing allegations and cancellations. Where does it end?
Right, exactly. It's for all of our audience to determine in their minds, but at least they have a better set of tools possibly to look at things with under the microscope of social media and journalism. Maybe they have a better idea now of how to discern these things. I hope so, because that's the whole idea of what we do here.
Please do put it in the comments. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. You've been listening to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast. This was a tough one. Thank you for joining us on this. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.